Hi everybody, this is Alex, the creator of the XFtoWP, the XenForo to WordPress plugin, and in this video demonstration, we are going to see how the new user syncing capabilities work to connect my WordPress site on the left here to my XenForo site here on the right. And we're going to run through the many different scenarios that these new user syncing capabilities offer to your business right now, including e-commerce functions as well. So I figured the best way to do this so everybody can sort of learn something here is we're going to start from scratch. We're going to set the plugin up, and then we're going to go right into activating the user syncing capabilities. So like I said, WordPress on the left, XenForo on the right, and I really don't have anything going on except the default theme over here, and definitely nothing going on over XenForo. So I'm going to jump into the WordPress admin, and I've already installed the XFtoWP plugin, and I have my test license key. Don't get too excited. This isn't going to do anything for you if you copy it, just for demonstration purposes. And now we want to make the connection from WordPress to XenForo. And we just need a couple of bits of info here. So the first, we're just going to grab that URL. I'll come over to XenForo, copy just the home directory, and we don't really need that slash. And then the most important part of the setup is creating the API key. So I have my XenForo admin over here. By the way, over here, there's no logged in user. I'm going to do some demonstration once we start creating some users. But over here, we have some admin stuff. So I'm going to go and create a new API key. And keep in mind that for all this stuff to work, you are going to want to be on the latest version of XenForo, at least version 2.2. So once we're here to create an API key, I'm just going to go right to it. So there's quite a different few types here, and you can experiment, but for simplicity's sake and for most of the user syncing capabilities to work, you're going to want to create this super user key. That's not going to be necessary in every situation. We're going to lay out when and where you can use a super user key versus a user key if you're concerned about any security implications. But for the most part, if you're using user syncing capabilities, create a super user key. And then next, the allowed scopes. So like I said, XFtoWP does a lot of different stuff, from replacing blog comments on WordPress with forum threads. And with the user syncing, we're going to just want to select what we want here. So you could select all scopes, but I'm just going to get the user write, read, delete, working backwards here, the to authorization. And I think that's all we're going to need for the user syncing. So we'll see all the other scopes that the plugin supports, but it's usually best to only enable what you're going to need across sites. And again, that's laid out in the docs. So we have our auth and our users, and of course we want to keep that active. So now we'll just save our API key, and XenForo is going to create it for us. So that's pretty easy. We'll go and copy that key, and we'll paste it into WordPress. And because this is a super user key, we need to assign a super user ID from XenForo. So for this demo, I'm just going to use my main account of user ID 1, but in a real scenario, I would recommend you create just a registered user who's not anything special, and then you go to groups and permissions and go to administrators, and you can add administrator. And then the only permission that any super user admin who's creating and manipulating users across sites is going to need is just this manage users and moderators permission. They don't need to do anything else. So because we're always trying to think in terms of security and limiting the API to only what we need, this is probably something that you're going to want to do. But for this, I'm just going to use my own admin account, which is 1. So with this stuff in here, I'm just going to go ahead and save. And now that the options page has been saved, I can refresh and see if the connection went through. So now I see the title of my board, it links to it. And I can also check out that I have this green check mark and that the site setup panel now is giving me the information about API key, including the permissions that we have. So these are all the ones that we enabled, and these are the other ones that we could create. And now that I'm looking at this, I realize that I want to do a couple of other things as well. I want to add the conversation and alerts. So I'm just going to backtrack over to my API key because this plugin can actually send alerts as well. So I have alert write, and it can also send conversations. So I'm going to enable conversation write, and then we'll save it. And then I'm just going to refresh and see that it's now picking up the conversation and alert. So this is awesome. Our sites are connected and we can start doing stuff. But before we do stuff, I'm just going to lay out the end goal, the end result of what we're trying to do here. So let's imagine that I have a product I'm selling on this WordPress site. And when people buy it, I want them to be able to sign in to the same account they created on WordPress. And I also want them to be verified into a particular user group that I create on the XenForo side that gives them permissions and access to certain parts of the XenForo side. However you lay out the permissions on XenForo is totally up to you. But all we're concerned about here is creating those basic actions of syncing the user from WordPress to XenForo, creating their account, or adding a purchase to an existing account, and setting custom user groups on a per product or per scenario basis. So the first thing I want to do with these user groups in mind is I want to add the XenForo user groups to the WordPress side that we are potentially dealing with here. So once the API is set up, we'll just click to this user groups tab and we'll see a button that says new user group. So now we can add as many user groups that we've already created in XenForo here. And this is just so the plugin knows which ones to move which users into. So we're going to go to groups and permissions and user groups. And we have some user groups that I've already made here. And there's some of these I'm going to want to mirror over there. So all we're going to need here is the user group ID and then the name. So I have this customer group, this MD customer group, and verified members. So these are the three groups that I want. And we'll put test in there too. So I'm looking at it, and customer ID, there's a few ways to get the IDs. I'm just hovering right now and seeing what the URL in the little bottom left-hand side of the browser says, but you can actually go click through to the group and see that the ID of this group is 5. So this is what we want as well. So we have 5, we have 6, 8, and 7. All right. So over here, I just want to match that. So we'll do 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, if there was like a one button to import these groups, I'd do it, but this is what we got. But it's not too bad. So customer, MD customer. This one is the verified member. I have an idea for how I'm going to use all these. And then I just have the test group. So now with these user groups in here, and they're pretty much mirrored, I'm just going to save. And our user groups will be saved. We can always go back there later, change the label, ID, make any typos. All good. Our sites are set up, and now we can really use the user sync capabilities. So we're going to close that and then jump over to user sync. We're going to be greeted with the very powerful actions box, but for now, because it's our first time set up, we want to jump over to settings. So because there are so many different possibilities of different plugin configurations, of different just needs for what you want in user syncing, and the simple fact that some people who use XFtoWP won't even need user syncing, maybe they just want to use thread comments or some other stuff, we've opted to make certain parts of user syncing simply enableable, maybe a word, by each of these checkboxes here. So if you want all this stuff, all you got to do is just check what you want. Something like user deletions can be it's a very intense action. So maybe you don't quite want that power, but you do want your new registrations to sync, and then you also want account details to update. I'm going to enable the user deletions part for now, and we have some other options here that we'll look at later. We just want to test these basic functionalities. So now we're going to save those, and they're going to be enabled for us. So now from here on out, anybody who registers to WordPress is going to be mirrored over to XenForo. So that's a pretty basic concept, but I want to now level that up by tying in some user actions to that. So we'll jump over the actions, and this is definitely the coolest part. I think you're going to have a lot of fun unleashing this power with these integrations. So user actions are basically a series of different things that can happen based on different actions taken on your WordPress site. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and create a new action, and we will name it when user registers. And in here are all the settings we have for this action. So the default action is going to run action on user register. And when you click this drop down, you're going to see what you have. When you enable e-commerce plugins, you'll see more here, and we'll look at that later. And to be honest, because it's the beta, I'm not sure this user verify one is supposed to be here, but the default ones are certainly run action on user register, on user email change, and user password change. So these are all options available for you. We're just going to leave it on user register because I do want an exclusive action to run every time somebody registers. And this is going to go on top of the obvious stuff that already happens on the XenForo side when a user is registered. So this is going to be the stuff on top of it. And the next option we'll see here is we can actually add them to a secondary user group, and we can send them different messages. This is where the conversation and alert permissions come in. So first we'll look at the secondary user groups. Just in this scenario, let's say I have some other like a light product offering or something, and anybody who is registered to my WordPress site, I just want to give them some kind of verification, some verified badge, because I actually went through this process. So that's what this verified member group is. So simply on register, I want to add them to the verified member group, and I want to send them let's send them a new conversation. So I'll say, welcome to the forums. And I know that because the context of this conversation is coming from they registered on the WordPress side, maybe that there's some special messaging I can offer them, because this kind of action allows you to think very contextually. So we'll say, welcome to the forums. Hey, hey, thank you for signing up. You can now access the verified members forums. And then any available variables are going to be down here. So you could say, hey, username, if you wanted to. So that's message text. So that's all we're going to have for this user action. Once we have that action saved, or we're going to save it. And of course, we can go in and then change any parameters that we would want there later. So what we've just done here is we've enabled the user syncing, registration, and other actions. And then we created another action on top of that to add them to secondary groups and to start a conversation. So now we should expect all these things to happen when a user registers from WordPress. So by default, we're not using any plugins. We're just using the standard WordPress registration mechanisms. So let's go test those right now. And I know on my own forms that I tend to have to manually create users from time to time. So that's the first thing we'll do over here. So we'll jump to users, add new, and I'm just going to go ahead, manual user. I'll come up with some bogus email here. And then if I wanted to test the login myself, I'll just give it an easy password. And now with this click of a button, we're going to have this user registered on WordPress and simultaneously to XenForo. So now that I'm here, we can see that we have this user, and let's just edit the profile from the admin side and check out what we got. So all pretty standard stuff. But now over here, we'll see the XenForo profile information has been filled in. So now we can see the user ID of this XenForo user. We can see their username, and we can also see their email. So the email is going to match whatever is here. And whenever you change this, or if the user changes it, this will also be updated. Just like if the password is then changed on the WordPress side, those two bits of information are going to be synced to XenForo, so they can use the same details to log in. And we'll also see the user groups, all the user groups we added as possibilities. One of them is checked, and that's because of the user action we set up. So the user register action ran, and it added them to verified. And we also have some other just data about when the last time they were synced to the site, and then also the very first time they were synced. So that just happened right now. So now we can actually test to make sure it works. This all looks pretty on WordPress, but does it actually work on XenForo? So now I'm over here to the right, and I will go ahead and log in, manual user, and then I have that password, which was just test. So moment of truth, I log in, and here he is. Here's our user, and you definitely did not see me create that in XenForo. That was all from WordPress. So we can even go further, and we can look at the message. Welcome to the forums, sent from my API user with that exact message text. So awesome. The private message worked, and the user's registered. But let's just double check the user group, because as cool as it can be in WordPress, this whole concept is to actually go and make changes in XenForo. So that was a bogus account. These are the real accounts here. So there's the manual user, and I can scroll through their profile and see verified member selected. So it really did work. The user action was set up and it's awesome. So cool. That's how we're going to manually add users now. WordPress also has a front end registration form that we ought to try out as well. So I'll just log out of this one, and I'm going to jump over to this test site, and we're going to find the WordPress registration form. So if you have users that register with the default WordPress register system, we'll just click register, and now we're just going to create our own. So here's another test user, I'll name it. And then this email, I'll use one of mine. And now we'll register. So you notice the default WordPress system, they're going to send you an email first, and then you can click a link to set your password. So I'm just going to go off screen very quick to get that link. And here's that page I clicked through in my email to set that password. So I'm just going to set it to test as well, confirm use. And with this opportunity here, actually, we do have another setting we can enable to do something really cool also. So before I hit the save password and make it official, let's go back to the settings, and we're going to go back to user sync settings, and we're going to enable this login action that's going to actually redirect and log us into XenForo automatically from WordPress. So let's enable that. Cool. So now over here, I'm just going to seal the deal. We're going to save the password. And I can now log in. So not only do I expect this, what was it called? Test user. Not only do I expect this to actually have created an account in XenForo and changed it to the verified group and sent the private message, but I also expect logging in from WordPress right here to log me into XenForo as well. So I'm going to click login, and we see that we've been redirected to XenForo and we're logged in as the test user, and we can read that message, and we can go check it out in the user's side and see that all the credentials and details are correct. So with just enabling a few options in the XFtoWP plugin, we have these really powerful user actions already set up and working pretty well. So what else can we do? Well, it actually turns out we can get pretty crazy with this. So what we just went over was connecting a single WordPress user to a single XenForo user. But what if we wanted to connect a single WordPress user to multiple XenForo users? Now, maybe that sounds insane on the surface, but there could really be some really great uses for this that could make you a little bit more money and really increase activity on your forum. So, for example, say you were selling some kind of enterprise or developer level license or product bundle on your site, and you wanted to encourage that main purchaser to bring their team, to bring other people into the forums, and rather than having to email you and say, hey, can you give this forum user part of my team, can you give them access to these private customer forums for me? What if you could just give them a way to manage their team on their own and not have to hassle you every time they want to add somebody to their account? With XFtoWP, that is a huge possibility. And not only is it a possibility, it's a reality. So we're actually going to go to the settings and we're just going to enable that. So by default, you can connect that single XF and WP user to one account. But in here, we can simply increase that to, let's just say 3. So now we can actually attach up to 3 XenForo accounts to any single WordPress user. And we can see what changing that setting does is we can go to the users, we can go to test user. And now this profile area looks a little bit different here. So our users have been grouped into these boxes. We have up to 3 of them, and we see that there's an account owner here. So what that account owner basically does is, like, there still has to be a main user attached to that, and this account owner is going to be the one who controls everything and can also reset their password and reset their email if needed. So any other users that you want to sync and sort of claim ownership from this account, they would have to already register on XenForo, and then what you would simply do is add the username, or you can search by email, and then it's going to go find that user on the XenForo side and connect them. With this admin controls, you can manually set the groups you want. And then this is also going to be possible from the front end too, which I'll show you momentarily. But first, let me just show you how cool it actually is to sync multiple users to an account. So let's just run through a couple different situations that may happen. So we don't really have many users to pick from actually. We created that manual user account, but that's already, as we know, linked to another WordPress account. So we would not want to have a situation where I have this manual user linked to this account and then another account. So we have some basic protections in place where, say somebody tried to verify a already verified user, we don't want them mucking up the system here. So when you go to try to sync that, there is going to be protection in place that can say like, hey, manual user's already been verified. We're not going to do anything with that. So try again. Then let's say there's a situation where I make a typo. I accidentally try to sync a user that doesn't already exist. User doesn't exist. Say that there's a typo or something, or this user just generally doesn't exist. When I try to sync that as well, if there's no user by that name on the forum, then we have nothing to sync to. So we don't want to allow these incorrect syncs to happen. So this plugin is listening and only making sure to verify the correct accounts. So what we want to do is we're going to create a new user just from XenForo. Let's say this was someone on your team who registered on their own. And once they give you that confirmation that they registered, you can then, you can then go ahead and sync that user. So I just created XF user, who's definitely there. And now when I look up XF user, I can do username or email, by the way. And when I look up XF user and I want to add them to verified, now when I sync this user, because he's not synced anywhere else, we can see that he's been added to this WordPress account. And to further verify, we can also see that the user ID and the email address, anything missing, has also been filled in. And of course, just to check our work here, let's go to the users section and we'll go to XF user. And we see that the verified member group is enabled. So that's what manual syncing with multiple users will look like. And of course, you can go crazy. You can mix and match groups. So let's skip ahead. Let's see, I want to go back and I want to add the groups, customer, MD, customer, verified. I'll refresh, and I'll see that that user was also synced to these additional groups too. So I'll just go ahead and uncheck that. And even if you wanted to remove them from everything, all these custom groups, then you will be able to as well. So I'll sync them so that they're not in any secondary user groups. Perfect. And just while we're on this subject of error validation and stuff, let's say that this user already had secondary user groups applied to it. So let's say that this XF user happened to actually be a moderator, right? They already have secondary groups. We want to make sure that anytime we sync groups from WordPress, we're not also removing any pre-existing groups too. So I'm just going to put this XF user back into verified, and we'll see now that our moderator is still a moderator and now also verified. And it still works even if you just went ahead and go from WordPress, you removed any groups or all groups from that user. You can still see that any existing groups are not going to be affected by this action. So this connection is going to be as safe as possible for you to conduct through WordPress and not interfere or accidentally demote people. So this is all cool, but this has all been done from the admin side. And as I mentioned before, that there's a way to allow your registered users to control which accounts are synced to your XenForo. So what we want to do is give users on the front end a similar form to this to basically allow them to do the same thing. So how are we going to go ahead and do that? Well, let's jump over to the logged out, I'm logged in as the test user over here, and we'll go to the My Account page. So your XFtoWP provides a form similar to what we see in the admin side that you can embed into your account area on your own WordPress site. So this is just a simple page we're dealing with over here, and we want to add something right below this text. So I'm going to go back to admin real quick, go to pages. I'm going to find that my account page, and XFtoWP provides a pretty simple shortcode that you can just paste into your own templates or your own pages. Here in this editor thing, we have to do a shortcode. So find the shortcode block, and the shortcode is called XF with a template parameter. And it's the template we're looking for here is called user verify. I might make some shorthand way to write this, but you'll always be able to copy this from the XFtoWP documentation section on the website. So I'll update it with that shortcode implemented, and we'll go ahead, and again, I'm logged in as test user, so I'm going to see the information for this user on the account. So I'm going to refresh, and just like that, I can see that we have the same information as we saw from the admin side. The only thing missing from this form, though, are the user groups. So we're going to want to add that here as well. So we're going to jump back over to the XFtoWP settings, and for permission, for kind of security reasons, we've determined that just because you add user groups here as the admin doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to want your users to be able to promote and demote them on the spot. So we've created this secondhand setting here in user sync that actually will allow you to manually enable the groups that you want to be able to go in between for your users. So I'm going to tie the customer and MD customer groups to an e-commerce demonstration, which I'm going to do in a different video. But for now, I just want to give my registered users the ability to toggle in and out the verified members. So I'm going to enable that. And then just for test, let's do a test group too. So now we have these two groups, and we can refresh and see now that these users have the ability to go between verified or tests. Now, if you remember when we registered the XF user and then we synced him, I added him to verified, but when I was showing you a couple different configurations, I unverified him, you could say. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add him to verified, and then also from test. Again, this is all coming from the test user now. And once I have those groups, once I update the user, I'll just simply update, and the form was submitted, and I'll simply go over to the XF user who I just changed and see that he is a moderator, but I want him to be a verified and test group as well. And we can see that that user from WordPress was able to add these user groups very, very simply. So it's all pretty cool and quite seamless as well for anyone who has to use these tools. So the last thing I want to show you before I wrap this video up, since it went a lot longer than I had anticipated, we'll have to do the e-commerce capabilities in a separate video. But the last thing I want to show you is just another helpful admin utility. So as you can imagine, as there are more and more users syncing different accounts across sites, you might want to have a utility that allows you to see just exactly what accounts are connected to the other accounts. So XFtoWP creates a pretty cool log inside of WordPress that you can access under connected data. So this page is going to show you just all of the connections made across your site, including threads, which I don't have any set up because we're not talking about the thread comments in this video. But if you click over to the connected users tab, now you'll be able to see that there's actually a log of every WordPress user who's connected to whom. And you'll also see that manual users connect to manual user. And even though test user has multiple accounts, you can also see that test user has who he has, So you can click your edit buttons. You can jump over to the XenForo side by clicking links. This page should hopefully help you deal with any weird situations and anything you might need to moderate or just to review on your own. So I hope that's going to be helpful for you. And with that, we're going to wrap this one up. So please let me know what you think of any of these capabilities. If you have any feedback, questions, I would love to talk to you about them. And I really think that this plugin is going to be an immense help to your business and expand your current offerings. So thank you again. I'm Alex, the creator of the Marketer's Delight WordPress theme and design system, and also of the very cool XenForo to WordPress plugin. So thank you, and I will look forward to talking to you in the next video.